So, like you, I mismanaged my time. So now I gotta speedcraft 2 scenarios worth of skirmish game slash tabletop terrain within a couple of days. So we're gonna use some foam and some hot glue and probably some Lego. Oh, the heresy. Greetings, good humans, and welcome to Tabletop Alchemy, where sometimes we run out of time and have to stay up all night getting something done. We're all familiar with that, right? And we thank our patrons for supporting these crash course gaming endeavors. You know, by supplying copious amounts of caffeine. Thank you. Alright, so I'm betting that we've all been here, whether you're a dungeon master or a skirmish gamer or a Warhammer or war gamer. Sometimes you have a game day set up, and we all know how rare those can be because of all the logistics of coordinating like busy adult schedules and stuff. We call things adult, whatever. And sometimes life conspires to make your game day prep time very, very short. At least it does for me. But you don't want to disappoint your players or your opponents, as the case may be, so you only got one choice. Speedcrafting terrain. Now, we're gearing up to play the last 2 scenarios in the first Rangers of Shadowdeep mission, and I was caught a little bit off balance by the terrain requirements for these scenarios. Now, I knew at some point in this game I was going to need to build some walls, but I was completely surprised by the need for interior decorating. I don't have any of this stuff, on top of not having walls. So, I'm stressed out a little bit, and I went and checked Etsy and eBay for some 3D printed medieval furniture, and there's some very cool D&D style miniature interior decor out there. Interior decor, interior decorations. Anyway, doesn't matter because not a single thing I could find could I actually order and get in time for this game. So I decided to postpone that particular stress and hack some walls out of the XPS foam I have stashed in the Pile of Opportunity Terrain Edition. Basically, I need to create 3 connected 18 by 18 inch rooms. Now, years ago, I had to ask my brother in New Jersey to buy me a 4 by 8 sheet of half-inch XPS foam. I had to see if he could have it cut down into 24 by 16 inch panels so that he could then ship me a box full of essentially a carved up 4 by 8 sheet of XPS foam. All because California doesn't allow, apparently, the sale of 4 by 8 sheets of this particular material anymore. I'm not sure why. They sell little 2 foot by 2 foot chunks of this stuff. But anyway, since I need 18 inch long walls, I figured I'd cut them at 3 inches tall to get 10 wall sections total. I can get 5 walls out of 1 of my sheets of XPS foam, so 2 sheets will suffice. Now, I'm trying to do all this stuff as fast as possible, but also know that I personally am very prone to making mistakes, even when I'm not rushing. So during the whole time, I kept trying to think of all the dimensions and how I'm going to actually fit these things together, and how I'm going to demarcate the doors that have to go into the walls, and how I want to handle the texturing of all this ridiculous foam. I mean, each wall section is 72 square inches of foam. And I did not want to hand scribe all of that square footage of foam. I have a handful of texture rollers for putty and Sculpey, stuff like that, so I thought I'd give them a try. I wasn't sure if they would work because the texture on these things is kind of fine. It's not very deep, but I gave it a shot and I made sure to apply as much pressure as I could, and lo and behold, it kind of worked. Now, it is pretty shallow, so I wasn't sure how it would dry brush, but I definitely prefer this idea to manually scribing in a rock wall texture at 28 or 30 millimeter scale, right? I mean, over these long wall pieces. Rolling each one of these took a surprising amount of physical effort. There's a lot of finger crimping and forearm muscle stuff going on that I am not normally used to doing. And, so after I would roll both sides of a single wall piece, I'm not embarrassed. I would just take a break. But so it took a while. It took a while to get these stupid walls done. and textured. Then I got some Mod Podge out to seal up the foam. Usually, we tint this with paint, right? But I wondered if I could save a step later and just put a wash over the Mod Podge and skip the whole dry brushing step. Now, right before putting the Mod Podge down, I realized, I forgot to texture the tops of the walls, so I went ahead and did that. It actually didn't turn out to be too difficult. I stacked a bunch together and rolled the roller across like 3 or 4 of them at a time. No big deal. So then I slapped the Mod Podge just straight up onto the foam, and I got to take another long break while it dried. Because yes, sometimes breaks are my favorite part of any job. Okay, most times. You happy now? Huh? Feeling good about yourself? I like taking breaks. So do you. After the Mod Podge dried, I tried out my genius time-saving idea, and I saw right away it was the opposite of genius. Is anyone surprised? Not even you, back there with the donuts. Just a bunch of head shaking. Anyway, I got out the craft paint and slapped that over all 900 square inches of textured foam. Then I got to take another break. So after that, I did some dry brushing. Again, I'm just super impatient and rushed, and I was just wanting something that wasn't, well, to be perfectly honest, I just didn't want big chunks of pink foam. I think as long as I could get something that wasn't pink foam, I was in the win column. So yeah, one pass with a dry brush and I am moving on because I have more stuff to do. Now, each of the rooms are supposed to be 18 inches by 18 inches. But of course, there's the thickness of the walls to account for, so even though an inch bigger or smaller isn't a big deal, in the size of the rooms, especially when speed crafting, I was still thinking about how I was gonna join it all up, right? Join all the wall pieces together. I briefly entertained the notion of using this bunch of tiny magnets I ordered quite a while ago to specifically make some dungeon tiles as a whole dungeon tile project thing, because if you're a tabletop game YouTube channel, you have to make dungeon tiles. It's a requirement that I have yet to fulfill. I actually do have a new game. I got it in the mail a few months ago. It's one of the few Kickstarters that I backed, and I've been itching to get in there and play that, but it's on the list of to-do things, and I want to make dungeon tiles for that game, but I don't want it to do it as a speed crafting project. I want to put some time and effort into those and make them nice, and you have to do measurements and stuff to make sure the magnets line up, and I just didn't want to get into measuring and being careful and attentive to detail. It's not my strong suit. My whole thought here was that when these wall panels are done being used for the current game, they can be repurposed and chopped up and maybe souped up a little bit later on to be nice magnetized wall tiles when I get to that project. We'll see. So I'm just gonna pin these walls together with toothpicks. That's my whole game plan for the game day. But I knew that I needed some joining spacing blocks to connect all of these walls in the correct configuration so that they would measure out correctly. So I cut these bits of foam out of scraps and just painted them up in gray. But after I did those, I realized that they would push the walls outside the edges of my 36 by 36 inch game mat. And I wanted the rooms and the walls to fit on the game mat, so I wouldn't be dealing with the lip around the edge of the mat when I'm only got walls that are ½ inch thick. Anyway, so I went ahead and chopped an inch off of 5 of the walls to make 17 inches long, so they can be the inner wall dimensions, essentially. Now this way, the outside measurement of everything should stay within the 3-foot square mat that I have. So then I moved on to the next piece of terrain, which I was kind of looking forward to, because at least it was a little bit different than giant slabs of foam. I need a 6-inch sort of diameter bonfire that blocks line of sight, so it's got to be kind of tall, and it has to be capable of having a miniature placed on top of it. First, I wanted to make the center riser for the standing platform, and literally just grabbed the closest thing to me, which happened to be one of my many condiment cups that I have laying around. I love these things. And I just hot glued it to the middle of the base. Now I put another chunk of foam on the top of the cup to be the actual base for the mini to stand on. And I cut a little bevel around the top to accommodate what I initially thought would be a ring of snapped chopsticks, because that was my grand plan. I have a bag of those that I bought a long time ago. I'm actually almost out now. I need to buy another bag. Literally at the 99-cent store. Just handy to have around. They're useful as stir sticks and poking cats to annoy them. that sort of thing. Anyway, I thought to make the fire pit feel a little more defined, I should ring it with a border of stones. So I grabbed this jar of cork bits that I got for a couple of bucks on sale at Michael's some time ago, and I used those with some hot glue to make a ring of stones. Is it cheesy? Sure. Is it fast? Double sure. I put down a coat of black tinted Mod Podge to seal everything before I put the sticks on, and as I was putting that on, I realized that the condiment cup being clear could be a cool thing for putting a little battery-powered LED or two inside the little cup if I ever feel like making this whole little bonfire thing like light up at some point. So then I remembered I had a bag of twigs and sticks my buddy sent me from Oregon. I imported them. So I thought I'd use those instead of chopsticks for a less refined look than, uniform chopsticks just laid around. That wouldn't really look right, I guess. So anyway, then I put the sticks, or started putting the sticks down all around the bonfire and just used a bunch of hot glue. This took a little while, and I just used some cutters to chop them all right level with the mini platform. I'm not worried about any exposed hot glue. It's all gonna be fine. Overall, the sticks are kind of working out, I think, and it vaguely looks kind of like a bonfire. Sort of, right? At least it's like a reasonable facsimile of a bonfire, I guess. So I was satisfied with that, and I moved on. I slapped some wet dry brush on the cork rocks. Took me a while to read that word, just to make the cork rocks not black, even though I understand that scorched rocks should be scorched black, but whatever. There's no time for nuance, there's just time for broad strokes. Moving on. As a final step, I added some brown gravel all around the base. It was just something that kept popping up in my head that I should do, so I went with it, and I think it adds a little something. I don't really know what it adds, but I kind of like the overall look. I'm happy with it. All right, now I was still stressing about all of these interior decoration terrain items, and kind of out of desperation, it just dawned on me suddenly that I face a wall of Lego every day. I have my whole Lego corner in my apartment right over there. And I also just recently discovered the Critical Brick YouTube channel. So if you want some legit inspiration for playing D&D with Lego, definitely go check that channel out. That guy is pretty great with the whole Lego D&D thing. Now, back to your clever excuse for making shoddy terrain. I mean, your regularly scheduled speed crafting video. I whipped up a few bookcases with parts I had on hand. These are very simple builds that I knocked out really quick. In fact, I count the side tiles as a perfect example of snot. That's studs not on top for you non-AFOLs out there. Anyway, it's a good example of the snot technique, which I count as an extra non-speed crafting step in my whole speed crafting process. So there, my gamers got some luxurious, I don't know what I'm saying. We also need some tables, miniature tables. So I grabbed a couple of these old Lego doors. I thought they had a suitable medieval vibe. There's some candles for extra flavor, and an orc butter knife for flavor. Now on the second table, I just saw this Chima elephant head thing in one of my Lego bits boxes over there, and it's from the Chima theme, which is no longer in production. But I mean, how much more D&D can you get than a severed elephant head marked with runes, right? I mean, come on. Now, one of the rooms the warband is going to fight through is an armory, so we need some weapon racks. Again, very easy to build with just a simple support structure and 1x1 clip bricks. I made a few of these, I think I made like 3 or 4 of these. And I made a bunch of crates, or crate facsimile things, stand-in crates, with a bunch of added snot tiles, just because I felt like it. And these can be stacked to block line of sight. In fact, all of this stuff is really just intended to provide cover or break up line of sight or movement as much as possible, which is also why I just stuck together a bunch of Lego wall pieces that I had in another bin. Just simple forms that could maybe be like pillars in the rooms or whatever. All in all, I mean, I like Lego, but I'm not, a super big fan of mixing mediums like this in tabletop games. It's really kind of not something I like to do if I can avoid it. I mean, I'd really much rather have appropriate miniature terrain, right? That has a paint job, it's painted up like miniatures, etc. But I know one thing. Getting to play a tabletop game with some friends is way better than not being able to play a tabletop game with some friends. And look, here it is in action. And nobody really minded. Nobody commented on it. I mean, granted, they're not necessarily model makers. They're kind of fledgling gamers at this point, but they seem to have fun anyway. So, Don't let mixing up a bunch of weird stuff on your tabletop get in the way of hanging out, rolling dice, and having fun. 10 times out of 10, just being able to hang out with folks over any kind of game is a check in the win column. See ya.